Who's Crimea? Now this question stumps even Trump. The US response will change everything, from peace talks to military aid to Ukraine. A fierce battle for the peninsula. Kyiv, Moscow, and Washington have ignited a heated conflict. Why has Crimea become a fatal point on the path to peace? All the details right now.
Crimea has once again become a bargaining chip. Russia wanted legal recognition of the Ukrainian peninsula as Russian. And the US seems to see nothing wrong with this. But the Americans once again faced categorical resistance. After all, Crimea is Ukraine.
There's nothing to discuss. It's outside our constitution. This is our territory. This is our territory, the territory of the Ukrainian people. We can't just... Why would we? No, that won't happen.
The American president did not remain silent. He once again accused Zelensky of allegedly complicating negotiations with his statements about Crimea. And in general, the peninsula was lost many years ago.
No one is demanding that Zelensky recognize Crimea as Russian territory. But if he really wants to return Crimea, then why wasn't there a fight for it 11 years ago, when it was effectively handed over to Russia without a single shot? He has nothing to boast about. The situation in Ukraine is terrible. He can either choose peace or continue fighting for another 3 years before losing the entire country.
Such a response undoubtedly pleased Russia, and in the Kremlin, they only applauded Trump.
The freezing of the line. The freezing of the actual front line does not and cannot mean for Ukraine the legal recognition of the Ukrainian territories belonging to the Russian Federation. The belonging of the occupied territories to the Russian Federation. Trump did not listen to this. His administration still believes that, at least regarding Crimea, Ukraine should concede. Supposedly, there should be no tragedy here for further settlement or changes in international relations. This is unacceptable for Ukraine. This was ignored by the American administration.
So far, the USA has not refused anything that Russia requests. And probably the Kremlin thought, why not grab the peninsula legally? After all, this way it would be even easier for Russians to sell a symbolic victory over Ukraine.
Crimea holds a certain sacred significance for Russia. And since Putin started the entire war against Ukraine through the lens of Crimea, it is extremely important for him to show that it is an integral part of the Russian Federation, as it were, Russian land, Russian territory, which, according to him, his Russia has reclaimed.
But there is another reason. Putin is actually continuing to play a complex game, and the recognition of Crimea is the first step in a new game.
Putin and his minions understand perfectly well that this will set a precedent. If, for example, Russian jurisdiction over Crimea is recognized, then this can later be used as let's say, a starting point for the recognition of other territories that are currently temporarily occupied. Well, then they'll wait for some time and say, listen, there was a precedent. Crimea was recognized. It's exactly the same situation with other territories. And in general, all of Ukraine is Russia. So let's just recognize all of Ukraine as part of the Russian Federation.
And everything indicates that Trump is playing along with him in this. Although officially the American president doesn't particularly address the topic of Crimea, and it's not out of the question that Donald Trump might still perform a political flip.
We don't fully know if such an opinion or position exists within the United States. That is, they haven't officially stated this. Officially, I emphasize. And accordingly, Trump can always wriggle out and say that we didn't raise this issue and didn't even consider it. However, I do not rule out that Trump indeed believes that in his reality, this is quite permissible. If he has such a desire and wants to implement it in practice, he can do so through the mechanism of the so-called presidential proclamation.
And if he does decide on this, it doesn't mean that it will happen. After all, the consent of Congress is still needed.
And in the States, the president is still the head of the executive branch. And such issues, which concern international treaties, fall within the competence of Congress. And therefore, it's a very important point and a very important clarification that the United States Congress can, in principle, either block or disavow what Trump might do. So there are certain safeguards in place.
In any case, negotiations are ongoing. Crimea is one of the conditions. And even if Russia wants legal recognition, they won't succeed. It's likely just an element of pressure, probing to see who agrees to what. Well, what happens next? Only time will tell.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now. Shock! The Ukrainian armed forces wiped out a platoon of North Koreans in the Kursk region. The footage is truly shocking. Meanwhile, Russia is losing soldiers at lightning speed, with almost 1 million losses already. But even this is not enough for Alaudinov. He is in a panic, demanding more mobilization. And the Russian army is embarking on a new madness. Could it be that Putin demanded a breakthrough to Dnipro by May 9th? What this will lead to, we will tell you right now.
This is the British 155mm self-propelled artillery AS-90. The crew has soldiers of the 177th Mechanized Brigade, currently fighting in the Donetsk region. Their self-propelled artillery E is durable and precise like a sniper rifle.
Maximum visibility.
The maximum speed of the self-propelled artillery is 65 sled kilometers per hour. The firing range is 24.5 kilometers, and with a rocket projectile, it's 30 kilometers. Since the beginning of the day, there have already been 98 battles on the front line. Most of the Russian assaults are in the Pokrovsk direction, as noted by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. The Russians set a goal to capture Pokrovsk at the end of 2023 and made significant efforts to achieve this. In February of this year, the enemy suffered heavy losses and was forced to retreat. Now this retreat is effectively continuing. This is the result of one large but unsuccessful operation in which the Russians lost a lot of personnel and equipment. Viktor Tregubov, spokesperson for the Operational Strategic Group of Troops Khortytsia, on the air of the United News Marathon. In the Lyman direction, Russian assault troops are being massively eliminated by Ukrainian drones. Some infantrymen of the Russian Federation are trying to use portable electronic warfare systems, the military notes. These infantrymen run around with backpacks and antennas, armed like astronauts or ninja turtles. They do this to somehow protect themselves. We eliminate them using drops. The drone simply ascends higher. Maxim Belusov, head of the communications department of the 60th Separate Mechanized Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, in an interview with Army TV. In the Lyman sector, Ukrainian forces successfully repelled Russian assaults in the area of Redkodub and Tarsky in the Donetsk region. The enemy attempted to advance in the areas of Zarizov, Nova Kruglyakivka, and Bohuslavka in the Kharkiv region. In the Kursk direction, the Special Operations Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine destroyed a platoon of North Koreans. The operation was conducted last month, but details were only disclosed now for security reasons.
8 Rangers moved into the enemy's rear with the support of reconnaissance drones, reached a direct engagement distance, and took advantageous firing positions in the trenches. They initiated close combat against an enemy platoon of 25 men, 3 times their number, and maintained the initiative until its conclusion. Despite the enemy's numerical advantage and artillery fire, the Special Operations Forces warriors proved the superiority of quality over quantity and left the entire DPRK platoon with no chance. From the report of the Ukrainian Armed Forces Special Operations Command on Facebook.
Ukrainian Special Operations Forces destroyed a platoon of North Korean soldiers in close combat in the Kursk region. This event took place last month, but for security reasons, our military can only talk about it now. Neutralized with no chance of recovery. In the north, border guards turned an enemy radar station to ashes with FPV drone strikes. -10 near Vovchansk. The border guards of the Guard Brigade delivered precise strikes on enemy positions. Dozens of occupiers and a communication antenna were destroyed. Slowly, gradually, the losses of the occupiers in the war against Ukraine are approaching 1 million. In the last 24 hours, the Russian army lost 1,060 soldiers, 5 armored combat vehicles, 3 tanks, and nearly 50 artillery systems at the front.
This process, we're talking about the mass destruction of Russian servicemen by the Russian military command, could go on indefinitely. The tactics used are from World War II, the so-called Zhukov style, which means using numerical superiority as the main component to achieve both tactical and strategic goals.
Despite the fact that the Russians have already significantly committed to the war, there is still a shortage of people at the front. Putin was advised to send another 1 million people to the slaughter by the well-known military failure Abdi Alaudinov.
The European states, with their 2 boats, 3 motorcycles and 2 bicycles, trying to threaten us would immediately back down.
But it seems that even the Kremlin dictator is no longer listening to this nonsense.
Of course, if we had a resource of 1 million people behind us that we could deploy at any time, no one would dare to flaunt their bravado to us. They would all be eager to do anything to ensure we don't reach them with that 1 million. That's my opinion. But for me, the opinion of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief is paramount, because it's his decision.
Despite colossal losses, the Russian army is obsessed with the idea of reaching the borders of the Dnipropetrovsk region.
The possibility of reaching the administrative borders of the Donetsk and Dnipropetrovsk regions was reported as early as January. A notoriously known German journalist, Julian Röpke, reported sensational details back then, estimating that there were only 6 to 7 kilometers left to the borders of the Dnipropetrovsk region. It is currently the end of April, and as we can see, these kilometers have become a thorn in the side for the Russians.
Not calming down in any way, everything indicates that the occupiers are preparing for another offensive towards the administrative borders of the Donetsk and Dnipropetrovsk regions, reports the Ukrainian tactical group Ugledar.
Currently, the Ukrainian defense forces are conducting a series of stabilization measures in the Pokrovsk direction on both flanks, effectively nullifying the possibility of an operational encirclement of the Ukrainian group and practically eliminating the issue of a breakthrough by Russian occupation forces directly to the borders of the Dnipropetrovsk region.
Against the backdrop of the Russian army's offensive actions, the information that Putin is ready to stop the full-scale invasion of Ukraine got at the current front line. As part of efforts to reach a peace agreement with the head of the White House, Donald Trump, looks like an outright bluff. After all, a promise to Trump does not mean an end to the war and the killing of civilians. Moreover, Ukraine is convinced of this every day.